Welcome to the Hollywood In Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 38 of the Hollywood In Toto podcast. Thanks for listening. This week we're talking with comedian and YouTube star Chad Prather, a guy who can make you laugh and think all at once. But before the interview, I want to talk a little bit about late night TV. It's gotten really serious lately, and I'm not sure where the format really goes from here or where the crowds go. I kind of think it all goes back to the days after 9/11. Our country was dazed from that attack. 3,000 plus Americans were dead. Did anyone really feel like laughing at that point? Yet late night comics, including Saturday Night Live, kind of came to our rescue in a way. They gently made it okay to laugh again. They walked very cautiously back into more traditional humor. And in a way, it was kind of patriotic. And I always remember those times and think it was just a small gesture, but it was a wonderful gesture all the same. Today, things are different. And today, comedians view the Trump administration just being as a sort of a national catastrophe. Now, I'm not comparing the two, and I'm sure they wouldn't compare the two between 9/11 and the Trump administration just existing, but they're treating it in a similar fashion in that comedians can't just be funny. They can't do satire. They can't just poke and prod the administration. They've got to get on a soapbox, and they're doing it night after night after night. And it's absurd. Now, of course, you can mock Team Trump. What administration is more mockable than this particular one? I mean, they make the Clintons look obviously stone cold sober. But that's not enough for Colbert and company. They want to be taken seriously, like they're the next pundit class, and we must listen to them. They're the voice of the nation, or so they think. I wanted to read a particular quote from Seth Meyers from Late Night TV. I think this one really kind of sums it up as far as where they're going and, by golly, where the jokes go. Here he is. You could stand for a nation, or you can stand for a hateful movement. You can't do both. And if you don't make the right choice, I'm confident the American voter will. Paid for by the committee to, well, I'm not sure what committee it is or what they're trying to do. It's just all soapbox sermons at this point. Now, here's the deal. Trump happened for a reason. And all these late night comics don't get it. They missed it completely. They were detached, they weren't listening to the public, and now they're stunned at the result. Well, they shouldn't be. What they should do, though, is do some serious reflection on what happened and what it all means, and why so many people still refuse to leave that Trump train. It's going strong. Like every other mainstream pundit, Team Late Night should stop writing jokes for half the nation. Start considering targets that are outside your usual choices. There are plenty of them. Just start with Maxine Waters and go from there. It might just be the kind of thing where once you get going, the momentum carries you and you're off to the races. They're not doing that, and they should. And they might be funnier as a result, and I think red state audiences might actually start to pay attention to what they're saying again, because I don't think they are right now. And if they're trying to preach to the choir, well, that's good, but I think there's going to be a ratings disaster coming sooner than later.
Dear friends in Christ, the Reverend Michael Spurlock.
From the studio that brought you War Room and Miracles from Heaven comes All Saints, a new pastor's first assignment to close a struggling church.
You're to sell the church, ain't you?
The fact is, you had 12 people in that church today.
Jesus had 12 people. He done all right, didn't he?
Refugees searching to find a new home.
What do you think will happen to them when we leave?
Let's keep them in our prayers and ask for God's help.
Aren't you God's help?
From a seed of faith grows hope.
I think God spoke to me. He wants us to save this little church by making the land into a farm.
That voice you hear, be sure it's God's voice, not your own.
Starring John Corbett.
Back where we started.
We are not where we started. We're somewhere completely new.
All Saints. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. In theaters August 25th. For tickets and showtimes, go to allsaintsmovie.com.
This week's hit tip of the week is Chuck, an indie gem that didn't get enough love at the box office over the summertime, but now it's on home video, and let's kind of correct that situation. Liev Schreiber is Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne bleeder, who once went 15 rounds with the great Muhammad Ali. Only the film isn't a boxing story, and nor is that moment the finale of the film. It's just part of the overall story. It's more about Chuck the man, and he's a pretty flawed guy, clinging to his 15 minutes of fame and doing it rather badly. It's not a pretty film, and I'm not just talking about his face when he gets bumped up in the ring. It shows sort of the uglier side of people and sort of on the periphery of fame when you've got a taste of it, but it doesn't really last. It can be kind of ugly to watch. But you know what? The movie itself isn't. There's some really beautiful, quiet moments, and of course, Liev Schreiber is terrific here. He always is. But it's how the film deals with boxing and also without embracing all those sports movie cliches that we're just exhausted by. It's refreshing, a good film, great performances, and one that really should have gotten more attention when it came out. But you know what? That's what home video is all about. So please check it out. And if you like it, let me know on Twitter. I'm at Hollywood in Toto.
You're listening to my daddy's podcast. He lets me binge Bob's Burgers with him.
All right, let's get to this week's HitCast interview. Chad Prather quit his day job to pursue his passion, being himself professionally. He's a sharp, fast-talking Southerner with a penchant for really funny stories. CNN called him the pickup truck pundit, and it really stuck. Right now, he's crisscrossing the country, playing comedy gigs, sometimes with Steve McGrew, his Southern Fried tag team partner, sometimes going solo. But he's really good. I got a chance to see him a few months ago in Denver. I was laughing hard. He's not your typical joke, rat-a-tat comic. He's more of a guy who kind of weaves a different narrative, tells stories from his life. He makes it work, makes it funny. He's also a motivational speaker and a pundit with his YouTube channel, which gets a lot of views for all the right reasons. And if you haven't seen his very, very funny spoof video, Friends in Safe Spaces, well, check it out now on YouTube. A lot of people have already done so. Here's my chat with Chad Prather. Thank you again for taking some time to speak to me, Chad. You know, I saw you a few months ago. You and Steve McGrew were at the Denver Comedy Club. And one of the things that struck me at the show is you're a storyteller at heart. And I'm kind of curious, when you made the transition to comedy, was that sort of your natural way to lean, or did you try maybe kind of a joke attempt at a while? Talk about a little bit sort of that part of your career as a comedian.
No, that's, I've always been a storyteller. I've always been somebody that wanted to take people someplace. And so to do one-liners or little witticisms was never really my style. I was always known as the guy who could tell a story and make people laugh along the way. So I really don't see myself even still as a comedian or a comic. It's just not, I'm more of a humorist. But folks, unfortunately, they really don't know what that is anymore. kind of a lost art. And, I'm kind of an old Will Rogers type person. And so, yeah, it's funny. I've always tried to respect the folks who have kind of spent their time in the trenches over the years, learning comedy and mastering that craft. And so it's still kind of hard for me to even call myself a comedian.
Gotcha. Well, the last time we spoke, you were kind of fairly new to the game, and now you're touring all over. What's been the biggest surprise about being sort of a full-fledged humorist, right? I guess I'll use that term, bring it back into vogue. But what's been intriguing to you about the whole process?
Well, the beauty of it is that, by and large, people don't really think of the differences. I only use that on the professional level because, comics do think that way. For me, it's been the different methods that you can use to entertain people. So if you take the show that I'm doing right now where I do theaters and I'm going out and doing an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes, I can do anything I want to do. I can give them not only storytelling and some comedy and one-liners, I can give them music, both serious and stuff that's parody and makes them laugh. And I can even do inspirational and motivational stuff. And so I've been doing all of that stuff. So from my perspective, it entertains everybody. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's been surprising that I don't have to put myself in a box. I can really come out and be exactly who I am. And fortunately, people enjoy it.
When you're working a show and you've got a feel for the crowd, is there the sense that maybe midway through you're thinking, you know what, I should do a little bit more motivational content now because I think they're really kind of hungry for it? Or maybe do you back off and say, you know what, the crowd's rolling, they're laughing, I'm going to kind of stick to the jokes and the funny stories and go from there. I mean, can you kind of shape the show along the way?
For me, I'm a little bit of an improv guy. A lot of things will hit me, and I always try to tape my sets because I go back and I'll see things that I said that I never intended to say or do, and sometimes they're pretty good and sometimes they flop. But I've been in situations. Recently, I did 2 shows back to back in the same theater in Oklahoma, and I put in kind of a motivational piece in the middle that the first night really killed. I mean, people loved it. They were so excited and cheering and clapping and all of that, and then the next night, it was kind of floundered around a little bit. So for a lot of it, it's I want to try to go with the flow. I want to see what the audience is demanding. Mm-hmm. If they're really if I've got the laughs that are killing and really feel the liberty to do what I want to do, I'll stick with that and really get off script. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's kind of dangerous. But I am one of those guys that does allow the audience a little bit to dictate to me when I feel like it's being positive.
Gotcha. When I saw your show, I had seen some of your videos, and I'll have all the sort of links to some of your videos and all the information at the HollywoodandToto.com show notes page. I expected a more political show, and when I saw it, it was almost completely apolitical. Now, I know you do kind of get into trenches there on video, but is that sort of part of your sort of live philosophy that, hey, I want to keep this sort of for everyone, or do you find that you're incorporating more politics into your show now that in more recent appearances?
Well, in the recent appearances, with the Safe Spaces show, Steve and I, we both lean conservative in our politics. We talk about that a little bit online. We really try not to alienate anybody, but in today's culture, I'm afraid you can't even bring it up without alienating people. They can't just discuss things anymore. Everybody's got to hate each other, at least online. But we said, well, we're not going to make this a real political show, and so we haven't. We've kind of stuck to that middle of the road comedy. The new show, the Star Spangled Banter tour that I'm doing, I do get a little bit more, not so much into the politics as I do the importance of America and the American philosophy of life and the thing that does unite us, because I want people to be a little bit disarmed and then come in and hopefully I can play some little bit of a part of helping people unite again. And, maybe that's a lofty dream. I don't know. But I know that mostly conservatives are going to be coming to my shows. And I want to speak to them and say, look, name calling doesn't work. And putting people down and arguing online, it doesn't work. We really have this great experiment, this couple 100-year-old experiment called America. And it still does work if you'll utilize it and embrace it, regardless of people's political standpoint. So I try to stick with that, and hopefully when they come out of it, they're going, yeah, you know what? You're right. We've kind of gotten off track there. Yeah. So, that's the hope and the dream, and I definitely don't dislike anybody. It's funny you asked that. I had a professional bio that was written about me recently. I've got a publicist in New York, and she hired a bio writer. He called me. We spent about an hour and a half on the phone, and at the end of the conversation, he said, I got to be honest with you. I've watched your videos, and I agree with exactly 0% of the words that come out of your mouth. And I said, well, that's at least you're honest. And he said, but to be honest with you, after a conversation with you for an hour, you've kind of won me over to see what your purpose is and what your intentions are, even with the video. So he said, at least I can say I appreciate that.
Oh,
it's so
in today's day and age. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get to know somebody sitting in the cab of their truck in 1.5 to 2.5 minutes when they're ranting over something that is partly character and partly a bit. It's not. I'm not an evangelist trying to win people over. I'm trying to get you to look at my perspective and also maybe laugh about it a little bit. And sometimes I'll go extreme just to get the laugh. And unfortunately, because comedy and humor is so subjective, people don't get the laugh; they get offended. So yeah, I have people. So like, I'm doing New York City, I'm doing Portland, Oregon, I'm doing Eugene, Oregon. I'm going to be out in California and different places that have a very strong left wing community and population. And I have people online who said, "Oh man, they're going to protest you. It's going to go be crazy. You won't be able to handle all these left wingers and liberals are going to come to your show." And I'm like, and I hope they do, because they're going to be surprised at what they hear. Mm-hmm. When they come into this show. So
there's been no protest or anything yet, I'm assuming.
No, but a man can dream. I mean, I'm hoping they will at some point. That's a career builder right there, man.
That's right. Update your bio. Talk a little about Friends and Safe Spaces. It's a great song. It's a fun video. I know it officially went viral. What was the fallout? I mean, obviously people enjoyed it. You're on Fox News. Was there anything else about the fallout that was intriguing to you, or anything you can share? Reactions?
For me, it's I always, for the most part, I've always tried to shy away from the quote name calling. I didn't want to, call people snowflakes but I did 2 parody songs, both of which really blew up: the Friends and Safe Spaces and also the Snowflake Cry song, which was to Don McLean's American Pie. And I used it for that, and it was funny, and it was tongue in cheek, of course. What I got from it was a lot of people who, the majority, of course, enjoyed it, and then, of course, there were a few who really they just couldn't handle it. They just lost their minds over the thing. I did a show last week in Bozeman, Montana. Bozeman is traditionally left-leaning. Montana State University is there. But I had a college professor who came to me before the show, and he said, "Please tell me you're going to sing the Snowflake song." And I said, "No, there's a couple thousand people out here. This is the state fair. I think I'm going to avoid that one." In a comedy club with a couple hundred people, that's one thing. I know what they bought the ticket to come see, but people that are kind of thrust into it at the state fair, I figured I better chill out a little bit.
Well, that's an interesting point you raised, and I appreciate. You're still a young guy and still a young performer, but there are. Look at Roger Waters. I think at this point you kind of know what you're going to expect with one of his concerts, but a lot of stand-ups, a lot of singers will go on stage, get political, and we're thinking, you know what? I just paid $100 for my ticket. I've got a babysitter. This was my plan for like 2 months, and now I'm getting lectured at, whether I agree or disagree. It sounds like you got a different philosophy on that.
Well, I want people to enjoy themselves, first of all. I think that if you did do all of that, you got the babysitter, you bought the ticket, you went online, you went through the effort of driving across town to come to one of the shows. I want you to laugh, but I want you to feel good. And so I know a lot of comics that are out there who say, we don't care if you feel good or not. We're going to hit you. We're going to hit you hard. If you get offended, you get offended. This is my, but here's the thing. Unlike a lot of comics, and I'm not being condescending or insulting, but this is just a fact. A lot of comics are introverted and a lot of comics are depressed, and they find a lot of their funny out of that psyche. I'm neither of those things. I'm extroverted. I'm optimistic. I'm a creative person. And so for me, I want you to walk out of there feeling a little bit built up. I want you to feel edified. Now, sometimes I get messages from people who say, we were offended. We expected this. We expected more political, or we expected more positive, or we expected more Jesus, or something of that nature. But people they come in a lot of times with an expectation of what they think you ought to be. I just have to be who I am, and hopefully you'll walk away from it and you'll feel good about the experience. But if you don't, you don't, because I'm not gonna hammer you with F-bombs. I'm not gonna, you're not gonna hear crude jokes. You'll hear some edgy stuff, depending. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. It just depends on the audience and kind of what mood I'm in. But by and large, I try to make sure that people feel like they bought a ticket and they were happy with their investment.
You're listening to the Hollywood In Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
You studied journalism in college, and I was kind of curious if any of that sort of is maybe paying dividends in an odd way with your current career.
It is. I do a lot of political stuff. We just recently launched, just less than a month ago, we launched politicalcowboy.com, which is an article-driven opinion piece where I can put some stuff that is very much specific to politics without worrying about, flooding my other social media feeds too much. But it has played well into that because I'm also a writer, and I also do think in terms of mass communication. And so I look at that and I'm thinking, boy, it only took me, 25 years to start using that degree, and that skill set. But it does come in handy, and it's made for a lot of different outlets that are fun.
Gotcha. Well, I have 3 arts degrees I've yet to use, so you're ahead of me by a couple steps. I was reading a recent interview you gave, and you talked about the press, and you said This is quoting you. I think the mainstream media has done a fantastic job of continuing to divide us, of telling people what to think. Yeah. And I can't disagree with that. I'm kind of curious, given your background, given your college work, and just overall thinking, what should the press be doing? If you were sort of working in a newsroom right now, what would you tell your fellow reporters about, hey, we need to do more of this and much less of that?
Well, it's hard to fill 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with talk and just report the news. That's why most people in America get their news from their local news. They don't trust the 24-hour mass media deals. There is that concept they teach you in journalism school called journalistic objectivity. If I can listen to a news report or read a news report about myself, and at the end of that article know how that person feels about me, it was not journalism. So
that's a great point.
Journalism is absolutely objective. I can't let you know. If you're doing that, then it becomes an opinion piece. It's not journalism anymore. You're not reporting the news. And so I took a little bit of criticism for saying that on Fox News about the objectivity. And so what I would say is, hey, guys, if you want to do an opinion piece, then call it an opinion piece. You're not doing journalism. And so we've miscommunicated and misdefined what journalism is, and we've totally recreated it. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I was curious about, you got this great delivery. You talk you're really fast. You kind of pronounce things that I couldn't get on 6 takes. And I read that you actually practiced that kind of delivery to sort of increase your vocal flexibility. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you did that? I'm kind of curious. I mean, how do you get better with your vocal patterns? And it clearly worked for you, but what was that like in the early days?
Well, I heard myself. I was on stage all through my teenage years. I was on television as a kid. And so I heard myself growing up in the South. I heard myself give a speech, a 45-minute speech when I was 19 years old. I heard a tape recording of that. And I said, holy crap, that sounds horrible. I mean, just the dialect was bad. You know, the dropping the R's, and which is a natural thing from people from Eastern Georgia. And so I said, I've got to work on that. And so from that point forward, if I was going to be speaking somewhere, whether it was going to be a church or a coliseum or some kind of auditorium, I would try to go into that auditorium the night before I was going to speak, and I would practice it to an empty, dark room, and I would just practice it. It was a little bit humiliating when the janitor walked in and I was talking to myself, but it paid tremendous dividends over the years because, for one, I was not only rehearsing, but I was able to hear myself say it. And that reading it, writing it, rehearsing it, hearing it, all of those things, you know, that regurgitating it, if you will, it gives you ownership of it. So for me, my brain works in such a way that if I can do all of those things, I can get my mouth conditioned to really spit the words out fast. And the reason that was relevant on what I do on social media is because I just didn't think people would listen to it for a long time. I needed to hurry and get it out before people turned it off. So I've got a video that I'm not putting on the broader social media. I'm sending it to a media group that I had to do in under 2 minutes, and it's a lot of information. And I was like, good Lord, I'm taking deep breaths after watching that thing. But it's a skill, and I hope I can keep it. I do not talk on the videos as fast as I'm capable of talking.
You're slowing it down.
If I wanted to, I could really, really spit it out. And sometimes I'll watch them back and I'll think, man, that is really moving. But you know, the mind processes so much more words per minute than what we can even say. And even though it may be uncomfortable for you, I think the mind, I want to say it can process something like 1,500, 1,800 words a minute, and we can only speak at like 700. So I might be challenging that statistic, though.
Gotcha. You've made the transition to comedy very easily and obviously being successful. I'm kind of curious, you've done some TV work, you're a humorist now. Do you have any sort of plans for like 2018 and beyond? I mean, do you kind of see other media? There are sort of opportunities. You strike me as an ambitious fellow with lots of talent and ways you could apply it in sort of different avenues.
Well, I handed off a pilot episode script and a character synopsis for a sitcom idea to Hollywood, and so many guys do that. Well, this one's kind of been jumped on. I mean, we've got some folks that are pretty high up in the entertainment world in LA who are really pushing this thing. We've got showrunners now that are trying to get this thing with a network somewhere. I had a big, long conference call yesterday with some very high up folks in agencies in LA. So who knows? I'm not holding my breath for that, because we know how TV works, but there is that. And of course, I'm hoping that the Political Cowboy site continues to grow, because that's a lot of fun. And that's a lot of work, but it's fun. And I hope to keep being in front of audiences. You know how much I'm going to be doing that. Hopefully it's going to be larger and larger audiences across the country. And I know that, I don't think that I'll ever be off stage. I've always loved that. I love being with people, actual people. And for me, that's kind of the natural high that I look forward to.
What's the bummer about being on the road? You travel a lot now. What's the thing that kind of drags you down, or you just wish I was just home right now and on my couch? I'd be much happier.
Yeah, I don't mind being on the road. My wife and I were very strategic in how we do that, and we've gotten very good at it. We make sure that we have our time together, and of course, time with the kids. And a lot of folks would look at it and say, "Man, you're never home." That's not true. I do the extra mile to get home as quick as I can, and we really soak up the quality time we've got together. We like each other. We've been married a good while, but we still like each other and get along great. But the thing I don't like is just the airport, man. Go in and out of the airports is just a blood pressure heightening experience, especially as often as I'm in there. And that's the worst part of it. Hotels don't bother me. Being in another city doesn't bother me. Strange people, that doesn't bother me. And it's just having to get there is the process for me.
Is there a quick travel tip or hack, as they call them now, you can share?
Yeah, I would say if you are going to be in the airport a lot, go get the pre-security screening. Do whatever you can do to get your miles up with the airline you fly the most, and get to a priority status to where you can get on board that plane as quick as possible, get to the front of the lines. It's so much easier than dealing with the TSA. But you see those offers all the time. Would you like to buy these many miles for what? Buy them. Just buy them. I mean, get the miles, do what you can do, invest in your travel. Because here's my philosophy, man. If you can buy time, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah,
if you can buy your time back, because that's one thing you will never get back. And so I tell people all the time, just buy time. And whatever saves you the extra few minutes and headache, go do it.
Excellent. Well, Chad, before we let you go, we always ask guests of the Hollywood In Toto podcast what they're watching these days, what they're reading, maybe the songs they're checking out on their iPod. Anything you could recommend for us?
Well, my really good friend, Adley Stump, she is a Nashville artist. She was on The Voice, and she was a finalist on The Voice. She's opening now for Blake Shelton around the country. She's got a new album, and loving what she's doing. On TV, we just started watching. We'll buy seasons and watch them when we can. I've been watching the show Blackish with Anthony Anderson, and I've kind of fallen in love with that show. That's been a funny one, and just started the first season of it, so I'm enjoying that. And reading wise, I'm reading everything that Ben Shapiro ever writes. And I love Ben Shapiro. He's just a great thinker and debater and conservative mind. And I think I've about read everything that he's done, including the pamphlets. And I love the guy. So I'm finishing up a book of his right now called Bullies. And so I highly recommend anything he's doing, especially if you want to challenge your mind a little bit.
I used to work with Ben at Breitbart.com. So he's one of the freakishly smartest guys I've ever met. And he is prolific. So I think you'll have new books and new stuff to read shortly.
Yeah, he's a prodigy. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, at such a young age to accomplish what he's done, and the way his brain works at that age is phenomenal.
Yeah, excellent. Well, again, thank you, Chad. Chad Prather, a very funny guy. I saw him a few months ago in Denver. Great comedy, great humor, good stories. It's sort of an old school approach that just feels refreshing and new at the same time. You can check him out at watchchad.com. Look for his upcoming shows in a town near you. And, of course, politicalcowboy.com as well. All this information will be on the show notes page at hollywoodintoto.com. You can find it there at hollywoodintoto.com/Chad-Prather. Chad, thanks so much, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Always a pleasure.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out HollywoodandToto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at HollywoodandToto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.